Let me start with the question that changes the entire war. If Iran's missiles have already been hit, if its drones are being hunted, if its military sites have been bombed again and again, why is Washington now looking at Iran's power plants and refineries? Because according to new reporting, the United States and Israel are planning what could become the most significant strikes ever on Iran's energy infrastructure. Not just missile launchers, not just radar stations, not just Revolutionary Guard command centers, power plants, refineries, energy facilities. That is a completely different level of escalation. Because energy infrastructure is not just another target list, it is the bloodstream of a country. It keeps lights on, it moves fuel, it powers factories, it supports transport, it feeds state revenue, it gives the government the basic ability to function. And in Iran's case, it also sits close to the power structure of the regime itself. The energy sector is central to the state, central to revenue, and central to the networks that help the Revolutionary Guard maintain influence. So if Trump and Israel really move forward with this plan, the message is not simply, we are punishing Iran. The message becomes, we are going after the system that keeps Iran running. That is why this moment is so dangerous. Trump is reportedly losing faith in diplomacy. He wants to go big. He wants this done quickly. The war is now entering its 6th month, and limited strikes have not produced the clean result Washington wanted. Iran has been weakened, but it has not surrendered. Its missiles have been reduced, but not erased. Its drones remain a concern. Its regional networks still create pressure, and its leverage around the Gulf has not disappeared. So now, the debate inside Washington appears to be shifting. If military targets are not enough, do you hit the economic engine? That is the question. But the risk is massive. Because once power plants and refineries become targets, the conflict stops looking like limited deterrence and starts looking like economic paralysis. Iran may see that not as another warning, but as an attempt to break the country from the inside. And that could make Tehran more dangerous, not less. A state that believes its military is being hit may still calculate. A state that believes its economy, electricity, fuel supply, and ability to govern are being attacked may decide it has nothing left to lose. That is where wars become harder to control. Now add Israel. Israel has not participated in the most recent attacks, but according to the report, it is now coordinating with the United States on this possible new round. That matters because if Israel comes back into the campaign, this is no longer just America responding to Iranian attacks. It becomes a renewed joint U.S.-Israel operation, and Iran will read it that way. Tehran will not separate the two. It will see one war machine, one strategy, one attempt to force surrender. And if Iran responds, it may not respond only against American forces or Israeli targets. It could respond through the Gulf, through shipping, through proxies, through drones, through oil markets, through every pressure point it still has left. That is why even some White House political advisors are reportedly opposing the plan. They understand the danger. Hit Iran's energy sector and oil prices could move. Hit refineries and the civilian cost could rise. Hit power plants and the world may start asking whether this is still a military campaign or something much bigger. Bring Israel back into full coordination and Iran may decide the ceasefire track is dead. So the real question is not whether America and Israel can hit Iran's energy infrastructure. They can. The real question is what happens the morning after. Does Iran finally come to the table in a meaningful way? Or does it answer by trying to make the whole region pay? Because this is the line between pressure and explosion. If Trump signs the order, the war enters a new phase. Not a phase of warning shots, not a phase of limited retaliation. A phase where the target becomes Iran's ability to power itself, govern itself, and survive the pressure. And once that line is crossed, nobody should pretend this is still the same war. Before we decide whether this strike plan is smart, reckless, or inevitable, we have to understand why energy infrastructure is different from every other target Iran has faced so far. A radar site is a military target. A missile launcher is a military target. A Revolutionary Guard command center is a military target. But power plants and refineries sit in a much more dangerous category. They are not only part of war, they are part of life. Electricity, fuel, water systems, hospitals, food supply chains, factories, transport, communications, and state revenue all depend on energy. So when a country's energy infrastructure becomes the target, the war moves from degrading military capability to pressuring the entire national system. That is why this reported plan matters so much. According to the reporting, the possible target list includes power plants, refineries, and other energy infrastructure. And if that is true, then Washington and Israel may be preparing to strike at the machinery that allows the Iranian state to function day after day. This is not just about stopping the next missile launch. It is about making Iran feel that the cost of resistance is now reaching the core of the country. That is a major shift. Until now, the public language from Washington has mostly focused on Iran's military capacity: missiles, drones, air defenses, IRGC facilities, command systems. The message was, Iran attacked, so Iran will be punished. But energy infrastructure changes the message. Now the message becomes, if Iran does not come back to the table, the pressure will expand from the battlefield into the economy. And that is exactly why some people inside the White House are reportedly uncomfortable with the plan. Political advisors understand something military planners do not always have to carry. A strike may look clean on a map, but it can become very messy in public. If refineries burn, if power cuts spread, if fuel becomes scarce, if civilian systems begin to fail, then Iran will not present this as a precision campaign against the regime. Iran will present it as an attack on the Iranian people. And that narrative matters. Because wars are not fought only with weapons, they are fought with stories. Washington will say, these targets support the regime, the IRGC, and Iran's war machine. Tehran will say, America and Israel are destroying electricity, fuel, and civilian life. Both sides will fight to define what the strike means, and whichever story travels faster will shape the political cost. That is the danger of energy targets. Even if the military logic is clear, the political result can become unpredictable. From the American side, the logic is easy to understand. Iran's energy sector is not just an economic sector. It helps fund the state. It supports the networks of power around the Revolutionary Guard. It gives the regime money, fuel, electricity, and the ability to keep its security system running. So if Trump is losing faith in diplomacy, energy infrastructure becomes the next pressure point. The thinking may be simple. Limited strikes did not force Iran to surrender. Missile strikes did not bring a clean outcome. Drone hunting did not end the threat. Economic sanctions did not produce the agreement Washington wanted. So now, hit the sector Iran cannot ignore: energy. That is what going big means. It means Washington may be moving from tactical pressure to strategic punishment. But here is the problem. Strategic punishment does not always produce strategic surrender. Sometimes it produces strategic rage. Because Iran will not see a strike on refineries and power plants as just another military message. It may see it as an attempt to break the country's internal stability. And if Tehran believes America and Israel are trying to damage the state's ability to govern, then Iran's response may become far more aggressive. That response may not come in one obvious form. Iran could target shipping in the Gulf. It could increase pressure around the Strait of Hormuz. It could use drones against American positions. It could activate proxy groups in Iraq, Syria, or elsewhere. It could strike energy infrastructure connected to Gulf states. It could escalate cyber operations. It could try to make oil markets panic. That is the risk. If America and Israel hit Iran's energy lifeline, Iran may decide to hit the region's energy nerves. And this is where the war becomes dangerous for the whole world. Because energy is not local. A refinery burning inside Iran may affect Iran directly, but the response to that strike could touch oil prices, shipping routes, insurance markets, Gulf security, and global inflation. That is why this decision cannot be treated like a normal target selection meeting. It is not just, can we hit it? Of course America and Israel can hit it. The real question is, what does Iran do after it is hit? That question is harder, and the answer is not certain. Now add Israel's possible return to the campaign. That is one of the most important parts of this story. Israel has not participated in the most recent U.S. attacks, but according to the reporting, it is coordinating with Washington on the possible energy strikes. That matters because if Israel comes back in, Iran will see this as a renewed joint operation, not America acting alone, not Israel acting alone, but the two together. And for Tehran, that changes the psychology. Iran already sees Israel as one of the central forces behind the pressure campaign. It sees the United States as the superpower enabling and expanding it. If both move together against energy infrastructure, Iran may conclude that diplomacy is no longer the real path. It may conclude that Washington is only using diplomacy as a pause before the next strike. That makes negotiations harder, not easier. Because for diplomacy to work, both sides need to believe there is still something to gain by staying at the table. But if Iran believes the table is only a place where it waits to be bombed again, then the incentive shifts. It may decide that resistance is safer than compromise. And this brings us back to the most important contradiction. Trump wants this done quickly. He is reportedly impatient. The war is entering its 6th month. Limited pressure has not produced the outcome he wanted. A quick, powerful strike campaign may look attractive because it promises momentum. It promises strength. It promises a way to force Iran into a decision. But wars rarely end just because one side wants speed. Speed can create shock. It can create pressure. It can destroy targets. But it can also create backlash faster than diplomacy can absorb it. If the strikes begin this weekend and last several days, the first 24 hours will be about explosions, military statements, and damage assessments. The second phase will be about Iran's response. The third phase will be about oil markets, allies, and whether the conflict spreads. That is the part nobody can fully control. A strike can be planned, the aftermath cannot. That is why the political aides who oppose the plan may be worried. They are not necessarily saying Iran should face no consequences. They may be asking a different question. What if this strike makes the war harder to end? Because once energy infrastructure is targeted, the ceiling of the war rises. The next Iranian retaliation could be bigger. The next American response could be stronger. Israel may push for continued operations. Iran may try to hit regional energy infrastructure. Gulf states may panic. Oil markets may move. And suddenly, what was supposed to be a fast strike becomes another open-ended phase. This is the pattern we keep seeing in this war. Every escalation is sold as the one that will restore control. But every escalation also creates the next reason control slips away. America hits military sites to stop Iranian attacks. Iran keeps some capability alive. America targets drones. Iran uses proxies. America threatens Tehran. Iran pressures Hormuz. Now America and Israel may target energy infrastructure. And the question becomes, what does Iran target next? That is why this moment is so critical. If Trump gives the final order, he may be making the strongest move of the war so far. But he may also be crossing into a kind of conflict where the line between military pressure and economic warfare disappears. And once that line disappears, the war becomes much harder to explain, harder to contain, and harder to end. Because energy is not just a target, energy is survival. And when survival becomes the target, the other side may stop negotiating like a state under pressure and start reacting like a regime under siege. That is the danger Washington now has to calculate. Not whether it can strike Iran's energy infrastructure, but whether striking Iran's energy infrastructure brings Tehran to the table, or convinces Tehran that the table no longer matters. Now widen the lens, because this possible strike is not only about Tehran's power grid or Iran's refineries. It is about the kind of war America is choosing to fight. There is a huge difference between destroying weapons and attacking the system that allows a country to function. Once energy infrastructure becomes the target, the war begins touching everything around it. Fuel prices, electricity, civilian pressure, inflation, shipping, Gulf security, and the political survival of the Iranian state. That is why this plan is so risky. From Washington's side, the logic is simple. Iran's energy sector gives the regime revenue, fuel, electricity, and control. It helps the state pay people, move supplies, support security forces, and keep the Revolutionary Guard's network alive. So if the goal is to force Iran back to meaningful talks, then hitting energy infrastructure may look like the fastest way to create pressure. But Iran will not describe it that way. Iran will say America and Israel are trying to cripple ordinary life. It will show dark cities, damaged power stations, fuel shortages, hospital strain, and families caught inside the pressure. Whether the targets are linked to the state or not, Tehran will turn the images into one message. This is not a war against our military. This is a war against Iran itself. And that message can be powerful. Because when a country feels attacked at the level of survival, Public anger does not always turn against the government. Sometimes it turns against the outside attacker. That is the gamble Washington is taking. The White House may hope this pressure makes Iran come to the table. But the strike could also give Iran's hardliners exactly the story they need. The enemy does not want a deal. The enemy wants collapse. So resistance is the only option left. That is where Israel's involvement becomes critical. If Israel joins this new round, Iran will not see two separate actors. It will see a joint campaign. It will see Washington and Tel Aviv moving together from military targets toward the economic heart of the country. And once Iran believes this is a coordinated attempt to break its internal stability, its response may not stay limited. Iran still has options. It can pressure the Strait of Hormuz. It can target shipping. It can activate proxies in Iraq or Syria. It can threaten Gulf energy facilities. It can launch drones at U.S. positions. It can increase attacks through aligned groups while denying direct responsibility. That is why the morning after the strike matters more than the strike itself. The explosions may last a few days. The consequences could last months. Oil markets will be the first place to watch. If refineries and power plants are hit, traders will immediately ask whether Iran will answer by threatening Gulf energy flows. Even the fear of that response can move prices. And once oil prices move, this stops being only a military story. It becomes an economic story for Europe, Asia, and America's own voters. That is why some political advisors inside the White House are reportedly opposed to the plan. They may understand that a strike can look strong for one news cycle, but become politically expensive if fuel prices rise, markets panic, or civilians suffer on camera. Trump wants speed. He wants pressure. He wants Iran to understand that patience is gone. But speed can be dangerous in war. A fast strike can create shock. A fast strike can destroy targets. A fast strike can dominate the headlines. But a fast strike can also create a reaction faster than diplomacy can manage. And this is the deeper problem. No one has clearly explained the end game. If the goal is to punish Iran, this strike may do that. If the goal is to damage the regime's economic engine, this strike may do that too. But if the goal is to force Iran into a stable settlement, the question becomes much harder. What if Iran does not come back to the table? What if it retaliates through Hormuz? What if Israel pushes for more strikes? What if America hits again? What if Iran answers again? What if the war becomes a cycle where every final blow creates the need for the next one? That is how wars lose their exit. Not because leaders admit they want endless conflict, but because each escalation fails to produce surrender, so the next escalation becomes easier to justify. The most dangerous sentence in any war is, "One more strike will finish it." Because often, one more strike does not finish it. It changes the enemy's calculation, hardens their position, and raises the cost of stopping. That may be exactly where this conflict is heading. Iran has been weakened, but not broken. America has overwhelming firepower, but not unlimited control. Israel may add force, but also adds escalation risk. Diplomacy still exists, but Trump is losing faith in it. And energy infrastructure may now become the line that turns pressure into something much larger. So the real question is not whether America and Israel can hit Iran's energy lifeline. They can. The real question is whether they can control what happens after Iran decides to hit back. Because if Iran responds through oil, shipping, drones, proxies, or Gulf energy targets, then this strike will not be remembered as the move that ended the war. It will be remembered as the moment the war changed shape. From military pressure to economic warfare. From limited retaliation to national survival. From a conflict about missiles to a conflict about the systems that keep a country alive. And once wars reach that stage, they become much harder to stop. So before you go, tell me in the comments, is Trump's plan to hit Iran's energy infrastructure the pressure needed to force a deal? Or is it the step that turns this war into a full economic battle across the Gulf?